All right. You know what it is? You know who it is. We're back. The BG Perform podcast is back. It's been a minute, been busy. We got a special guest. We got Kayla here. She's been someone you guys have seen me talk about a lot. I was on her podcast as well. And definitely excited to have a conversation with her today because she's been a big help and inspiration in terms of kind of getting me more into the space of training women and being more confident in training women. So thank you for coming. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. What an introduction.
Yeah. So let's start here. Tell everybody about yourself and we'll start there.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm Kayla. I am a physio by trade, but now I work more sort of in the education space, mainly educating coaches about the differences between women and men in terms of their physiology, anatomy, and training and nutrition throughout different stages of life. So it's been a journey all the way through. Sort of started in clinical practice as a physio after university, school, everything like that. My undergraduate was actually in exercise and sports science, and so I became a personal trainer as I was going through university, and then I spent 2 years in clinical practice post university, and I just felt like there was like a gap missing sort of between like rehab and performance, and I really missed the performance side of things, right? Because working in clinical practice, I was just seeing people who are already injured, and that those injuries could have been avoided through, you know, proper exercise execution and programming. So yeah, that's kind of where I went after clinical practice, is back into like more of a performance space, but as well doing sort of like physio on the side. So just a bit of a hybrid thing there. And then from there, yeah, that's where like I was getting a lot of questions from coaches and things like that. So decided to start the course.
All right. That's awesome, because that transitions right into my next question. All right. So you did all that, you went to school. I'm sure you had like an idea initially of what you wanted to do, right? Like going to school, and then you transition into the education and coaching space. So like when did you make that decision, and what kind of helped you decide like, all right, I'm not going to go this route. I'm going to use this information, but I'm actually going to, go a little bit of a different route? Because it seems like like I asked you the other day about you kind of like niching yourself into this area, that you went really specific, and it's good. So like kind of talk about that whole process when you decided to make that change.
Yeah, well, that's a really great question, because actually, like, I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Okay.
I just knew that I wanted to be in, like, I absolutely loved sport. Like, I've played sport ever since I was like 6 years old. And even before that, I was probably doing like dancing and ballet and things like that. So I've always been active, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do after school. Like, I had so many career changes in my head. Originally, it was like an athlete, like an Olympic athlete, and then it was like a lawyer. And then, you know, when I finished school, it was like, oh, do I want to go down the exercise route, or do I want to, you know, focus more on business? And so I took a year off to work and sort of figure things out. And I actually did some like business type courses. Like, I did a business subject in school and I hated it, and it was uninspiring, and so I dropped it and continued on with biology, which I thought I would drop. And then you know, in my gap year, I did further study in like business at TAFE and things like that, and yeah, just found it really uninspiring. And I think mainly because the teachers didn't have their own business, like their own successful business. So it was like, how can they teach on this if they haven't actually kind of been through it? So
It's one of the hardest things
I took
listen to a teacher tell you how to run this.
Right. Yeah. So I took that year off, and like, just as a side note, like, be wary of business coaches on Instagram or whatever who don't have a business, or if their business is based around like being a business owner, because like that's how they make the money, kind of thing. Yeah. So then from there, I just went into exercise and sports science because it's just, I don't know, it was kind of the whole like, you need to go to university type thing, and like, you know, what are you going to do? So anyway, I went to university. I did enjoy like the uni lifestyle, but I don't think I didn't find it very practical either. And even after my 3 years of exercise and sports science, I was like, what am I going to do now? I always thought I would go down the nutrition route. And then yeah, afterwards, like all my friends at uni were like, I want to do physio, I want to do physio, I want to do physio. I never considered being a physio, but I just applied for it. I don't know why. And I got in, and, you know, a lot of my friends didn't. And so I was like, because it was like really popular subject. And yeah, I got in. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just do this and sort of see how I like it. Ended up finishing like the 2 years, you know, was fascinated by like the anatomy, how the body works and everything like that. So yeah, that's kind of like, I guess it kind of just all like happened, if that kind of makes sense. I don't feel like I made those decisions. Like, I don't feel like I had to really like, you know, sit there and think, what is the decision to me? I feel like I kind of was just, I don't know, I guess guided through, and like things just happened. And the same with like getting my first job. Like, I had done a placement at that particular clinic while I was at university, and, you know, I wanted to go back there because I learned a lot there, and it was very hands-on and practical, and I did learn a lot like in my first even like 8 months there. But then I kind of outgrew it and then moved on to another clinic where I had a bit more autonomy over how I wanted to treat. And that was great learning experience as well, but I also still missed the performance side of things. So yeah, it wasn't really a decision. I feel like everything has kind of just been like, it's just happened, if that kind of makes sense. Like from, you know, from that second clinic, when I decided like that wasn't for me, I went to Japan and like luckily got a job there in a clinic doing snow sports injuries. And, you know, that was amazing timing as well, because that is very difficult to get a position there because everyone wants to do it, but they had just had someone pull out and they needed another physio. So yeah, and then I got back to Sydney and I worked at a well-known strength training facility in Sydney known as Base Body Babes or Base Gym. So working under Australian Strength Coach and Base Body Babes. And that was the female training side of things. So they had, you know, it was a strength training facility for females, which I just aligned like
that's awesome.
so much with. Like, I absolutely love strength training.
It was only females, like that
been
was
doing
only
it.
the ones that went.
Yeah, only females at the base studio, at the Base Body Studio, which is the female one. And then it was just like, you know, co-ed at Base Gym. And yeah, I worked there for 2 years. And then I went traveling with my now ex-partner, who was actually a chiropractor, and he was in the education space. And then COVID hit, and I decided that, yeah, I needed to run my own course and to do it, you know, specifically for females. Because I just, at the time, I was like, and I feel like there still isn't really a whole lot out there in terms of training females. Like it's very like, and, you know, with the research and things like that, when I was researching for the course, like there isn't a lot of information out there. So I had to go like digging for a lot, and still there is a lot that's unknown. And so I think, you know, once, you know, I'm sort of happy with where like the company is and where the business is, then I will go back into research and start like contributing back into that field. So that's a long story cut, like kind of short, but yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, I think like I told you before, but I think with the women's certifications, right? I think there's a lot of good information, but it's not from people who actively train or like go through the type of training that you go through or you've been through. So I think, you know, again, good segue into my next question, right? Because like the experience you have with the lifting, right? And the experience you have in the educational space with university and like your research that you've done, like, what do you think is the biggest struggle right now in women's fitness? So like, what do you see as the biggest hole and what do you see as the thing that kind of is causing there to be a lack of like connection between true like strength conditioning, or I'll call it fitness, and then like this educational side where it seems to be, because it seems, I don't think it's just in this space, but I think it's even more in this space, like even more apparent, where it's like the high end education and like the high end training are at like almost odds, I'll say. And there's very few who are like starting now. They're creeping to like come in. And I know you're one of them, especially in the women's space that I've seen, to bridge it. So what do you think is the biggest struggle right now?
I mean, we could go down the track of like, women shouldn't lift heavy, and lifting's going to make you bulky, which is like, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of, people are starting to catch on to that and be like, no, actually resistance training is really important for females. But I think as well, the other thing is that the whole menstrual cycle thing has just been kind of like pushed to the side, and it hasn't like truly been understood. And like, again, there's still not enough research. Like in the research with training, if men and women were put in the same study and there was an outlier of like a woman whose results showed something different, then that what they do is they get rid of the outlier because it skews the mean, like it skews the median of the data. So I think, yeah, the struggle is just having like enough concrete evidence, and not saying as well that anecdotal evidence like gets thrown out the window, because that's really important as well. And like, this is pretty much like when I'm training women and when I'm coaching women and teaching even, I say like every woman is different, like every woman is individual, because she's going to experience her menstrual cycle differently to say the next woman, but also she might experience her menstrual cycle differently month to month, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, but then also like the misconceptions that when you're on your bleed, when you're in your like menstruation phase, it's not a good time to train. Whereas like when we look at the actual hormones, they're quite stable. They're actually the most stable that they are throughout the entire cycle during that bleeding phase. And so that's when our physiology is actually as most similar to a man. And so we might, at the first few days when we're sort of coming down, there's like this withdrawal from estrogen, progesterone as our bleed occurs. There might be a few days where you're just not feeling great, feeling kind of shitty. But as you sort of start to get to like day 3 or so, then it starts to level off, and it can actually be quite a beneficial time to train. So I think sometimes like we get in our heads a little bit, and not to say that that's completely invalid either, because psychology is very important too. So I think it's just becoming more aware of how women are experiencing their cycle and working with that and not against it. So like not necessarily like noceboing ourselves into like, oh, I'm on my period, I can't train, but just becoming more aware and seeing how each woman experiences her cycle uniquely, if that kind of makes sense.
No, yeah, definitely. And I think it's hard because and it's just starting again, like yourself, this field is like predominantly men, and they probably either haven't done the research, don't care to do the research, or they got preoccupied by other things, but they haven't really taken the time to educate themselves enough to say, this is what needs to be done. And then you oftentimes get people who are just like, oh, training is training is training across the board regardless, right? Without even looking past individualization, and then looking past even deeper portions of that between male and female, and then like you're talking about even deeper. So I think I agree, and I think that it's starting to come about, and that's why the things that you do and the things that I've seen recently and things I'm trying to do as well are big. And I think that like being able to put that out there in a digestible fashion too, but because I think a lot for guys, it's not something that maybe they don't they don't not want to learn, but it's kind of hard to digest and understand, because it's like they can't, it's just something they can't experience. And I think that's something that like has stopped me before, is like I love, like I've wanted to learn about in the past, but it was just something I was like like, can I actually ever learn about it? Because like I don't go through it, but I can understand it enough to
Yeah.
try to explain, right? And then get enough talking and evidence from the females that I end up working with. So with all that being said, right, with what you have going on now with AWPT, the mentorship, you have you do online coaching, you do what else? There's the mini courses, right? Like the menstrual cycle course, and you're doing another one as well.
Yeah, we're branching out. So because AWPT literally just started as like my ex-partner and I, we were traveling around, and they were in-person seminars in actual gyms, and COVID, gyms weren't a thing, lockdown happened. So yeah, we had to like go online and transition online. So that 8-week course is like, I give a lot of value in it, but also like there is so much more that you can't learn everything in 8 weeks. So it kind of gives like I guess a little taster into different topics to do with women's health. And then we dive deeper into them. So like the mentorship is like a deep dive into like anatomy, biomechanics, and training. We also have a business component in there as well, because I think like with coaches, we know our craft so well, but we're never really taught that side of things. And I found like I struggled with that a lot. And yeah, we have the menstrual cycle course. So I asked people like, what do you want to dive into first? So the menstrual cycle was a big one, and it is really important, plays such an important role. And then, yeah, our next one that we're sort of working on is that pre-postnatal component, which is a huge topic as well.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
you were kind of saying, yeah, you were kind of saying like, as a man, you can't really have that personal experience of like experiencing menstrual cycle. For me, it's like not having gone through pregnancy, like I can know the theory of it, but working with women who have actually gone through pregnancy is really important for me on this one as well. So yeah, it's exciting. It's a
All
lot
right.
of work, but it's exciting.
Yeah, and like so you kind of mentioned that AWPT was started kind of on the fly while you were out, kind of traveling. What were, I guess, what were the initial plans, and when did you actually decide like what it was that was going to become? Like, I'm sure you had that idea before, and maybe it didn't come together as
Yeah.
smoothly, but like now that the idea came and started, like what was little like background about AWPT and what it is specifically.
Yeah, so just because there are other like male dominated education like companies out there, I didn't really know, like before I kind of went diving deep, I didn't really know of any other women's ones. And so like a couple have popped up now that I did a bit of like market research and things like that. But originally, and also I don't think there's one that's dominated by training as well. So I think like having that physio background and coming from a movement and exercise and sports science background, that's what I think is like quite different to other women's education companies in the in the market, is they focus a lot on like pre and postnatal kind of rehabby stuff, but I don't think there's one that really dives deep into like women's anatomy and biomechanics. So yeah, AWPT kind of evolved as I was creating it. So like I dive deep into the research myself, like even further. So I started with training and anatomy and biomechanics because that's what I knew. But then it kind of like the wormhole opened up of like the menstrual cycle and how that actually can play into training and even injuries as well. And then, yeah, I had done my women's health certification through university as well, through the Australian Physiotherapy Association. So I had like a background in, pre-postnatal training, but the menstrual cycle was actually something that I hadn't dived super deep into before. And then, yeah, just going through like the research and looking at different resources and things like that, it kind of just led me like through a wormhole, and like we're still kind of going, like it's literally like layers and layers and layers deep. And I think with like new coaches and things like that, it can get overwhelming, but having that like overview of like, okay, usually women want to work with women because they can relate and they feel more comfortable. So yeah, giving them those options to sort of say, okay, here's a taste of like the training side of things. Here's a taste of like the physiology. Here's a taste of like training during pregnancy. Here's a taste of like working with women, perimenopause, postmenopause. Like, which layer do you want to like rabbit hole through first, and then, you know, kind of moving on? Because it's the same, like I find it for my own personal development, it's the same for me. Like, it's literally like layers. Like, it's like the training, and then it was the physiology, and now it's like at the point of like the nervous system, and really taking that into account and how that interplays into everything else, into the menstrual cycle, into you know, just psychology, into people in general. So yeah, it's fun, but it's also never ending.
I gotcha. I mean, I think it's gonna evolve into something cool. And like, I think with, you know, everything you already have, right? Like you said, it's kind of, there's a lot of almost questions that haven't been answered yet, and a lot of questions that haven't even been like asked yet, maybe, you know, that you might be able to unveil or like get to before. And I think it's really awesome in terms of like training and like making that better. What are your, I guess, your long-term plans for AWPT? Like, what do you see it evolving into? What are kind of, you know, the things that you envision it, and how you think it's going to change from now to, you know, say, I mean, 5 years might be too long, but you know, kind of the idea there.
My God, great question, because that's actually a question I've been asking myself a lot lately as well.
All right, cool.
Because, you know, like for so long, like my, I guess, identity and like philosophy has been around like training and nutrition, but having like almost like a set way to kind of go about it. But there are so many different ways, so many different avenues. So, I mean, you might see my little whiteboard off to the side
Yeah, a
here.
little
It's
bit, yeah.
literally got like, yeah, it's got like the full like plan, I guess, on there. So first of all, I guess like short-ish term is to get that pre-postnatal certification happening. And so I basically want to have like these pillars of training, and so hitting the different pillars, and educating coaches like on those different pillars. So we have, like I said before, AWPT is the overview, but then we have like the deep dive into the menstrual cycle course. We have the mentorship, which is a deep dive into like training and biomechanics. We have you know, we're just testing out like a business course now for coaches as well, to help them with their online coaching, because everything's kind of going online now, and people want to, you know, be able to reach more people through the online stuff. And then also having a mindset / neuroscience component, because for me, like, and it's interesting the question that you asked, because like for my own personal development, like I'm currently doing a neuroscience course, which is 2 years long. There's different levels to it. So there's level 1 through to 4. Yeah, on our podcast. So for that started out as my own personal development, but as we kind of go through the levels, like level 3 will be how to apply this with your clients, and then and level 4 is like how to apply it within a company. And so, yeah, that's something that I want to bring to, because it's helped me so much with my own personal development, you know, being a leader, things like that, you know, having self-trust. A lot of coaches, I think, struggle with imposter syndrome and stuff like that. And, you know, just the importance of having a healthy nervous system and not being in like a sympathetic fight or flight response like all the time. How that's actually, you know, helped me with like my menstrual cycle personally and things like that, and my mental health. All of that stuff, I think, is just such a massive, it's like almost the overarching to everything. Like having a healthy nervous system, managing your stress levels, getting enough sleep, all that sort of stuff, and how that sort of plays into your overall health. So it started out as like training and nutrition, but now it's like holistic. And I've always kind of been a bit holistic as well. Like I've always valued your mindset and things like that. but just diving deep into the actual science behind it is like, it's so fascinating. And I want to bring that to, yeah, people on a larger scale, to coaches, especially, and then, you know, teaching coaches how they can implement those things with their clients as well. So as I evolve, this is something I've been speaking to a couple of mentors about lately. As I evolve, my business will evolve as well. And so it's nerve-wracking because I'm like, oh, like, you know, which direction, but it's also really exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah. And that's, I think that, again, that's the next bridge to be crossed with fitness is morphing those two into one. 'Cause I think, again, there's a lot of people doing like separate things that are starting to come together. And I'm starting to see it more, and you're starting to see the different avenues mix slightly, though. That's the thing. It's like there's bits and pieces that make their way into, you know, programming or information or knowledge and things like that. And I think that there needs to be more experience with all of it, and then broken down by somebody who's doing it themselves. Because like I said, I think oftentimes what happens is these people have great information, but then they don't practically understand how to use it or teach it or not even digest it, and then it gets lost in the sauce, and then you end up, you know, either using it wrong or not using it efficiently, you know. Because I think that in training there's a lot of people, and this is something I've struggled with, and, you know, trying to do too much within a session, right? You're trying to get too much done, or get too much, not even just in the session, but in like learning too, like taking the time to learn specific pieces and then breaking it down and doing that over 12 weeks instead of trying to say, oh, I'm going to learn this over the next 2 weeks and then half-ass use it, you know? So I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
So
For sure. Like it's like the health component of like health and fitness, because like we know that, you know, if you have like six-pack abs and you know, just focus on training and nutrition, it doesn't necessarily, like, looking fit on the outside doesn't necessarily mean like it's healthy. It doesn't necessarily correlate with health, because, you know, with certain sports and things like that, we know there are like massive demands placed on people, and so sometimes that goes, you know, above and beyond what the system is like able to healthily manage and is capable of. So yeah, it's just sort of like bringing that holistic approach, I think, to the industry that's so focused on aesthetics and fitness.
yeah, I think in the next, I'd like to say 5 years, but it'd probably be closer to 10. Like I think that more and more there's like a shift in stigmas now, right? Because I think there was so much, I don't want to say, and this wasn't necessarily like false information, but like misguided information that was given to everybody from the last 20 years that's already changing, you know. And like you look at our grandparents' generation or even our parents' generation, it's just kind of like some of the things they say about like health and fitness, you're like, what? Like, what did you just say to me? Or like they just don't understand it. Or in like, especially women, that's the, you know, the biggest one is like, I think women were given, and I don't know, I'm sure you've seen it, but like you see like ads back in the day, or like you see the things that were said about working out or training, or, you know, all this stuff. And it's almost it's embarrassing to like see, because you're just like, wow, I can't believe I thought that. But now you start to see it, and you see the benefits of the things that women are doing now in training, and the stuff that they're able to do like physically, you know. And it's awesome. So kind of transitioning a little bit from like the business to like personal, right? Like what kind of got you initially into training? And we don't have to go too deep into that, but like initially into training, and where do you kind of see yourself over the next period of time, whatever that might be, like transforming your fitness and kind of goals you have?
Yeah, so it all started since a super young age. I think it was dancing that I first got into when I was really young. So I might have been quite young when I first did ballet, and then that kind of transitioned over to soccer. So I think I started soccer when I was about like under sixes, and so it was like I was a tomboy growing up, so the ballet thing didn't really like resonate for too long. And I played soccer for like 18 years or something like that. And I dabbled in other sports along the way, like basketball. I think I played for 10 years or so. I played competitive
Play
football
basketball? All right,
that you
all
guys
right.
call over. Yeah. I don't know whether you guys call it football, but like gridiron kind of thing,
Yeah, yeah.
American football. And yeah, I guess from I was training in the gym, like I probably started weight training maybe around 15, 16 in the gym. I think we went to the gym for like a school sports thing or something like that, and got really into it.
Okay.
Started out with like the pump classes with weights, and then like the pump classes just got like a little bit easy with the weights, and so that's when I started in like the real weights room. And I had my own personal trainer. He was a big inspiration for me. Like he was always like, you should become a personal trainer, and I was like, nah, I'm not going to do that, and then like ended up becoming a personal
That's
trainer.
funny.
um yeah, and so yeah, I've been training like, yeah, I guess like I'm 30 now, so 15 years. Weights training, it's been, yeah, I've done like, I did the resistance training when I was playing the football. We had a strength and conditioning coach as well, so that's probably when I started lifting like proper heavy, because I needed to build some muscle. Like I was kind of scrawny, and that's like like an intense game. You know, sprinting was a part of that as well. So I was a wide receiver, so I had
Yeah.
to be quick as well. So like a lot of power. My cousin owns a CrossFit gym, so I've dabbled in CrossFit. I've done
Okay.
powerlifting when I was working at base. Yeah, I've done a whole lot of things, and yeah, now I have you programming for me
Yeah.
because I'm thinking about maybe not doing any fights, but like I want to learn like the specifics of like athletic training to like be fight ready in terms of like condition and things like that. And I'll probably do some like classes where I learn technique and conditioning and things like that. So yeah, that's exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think with your experience
Big
too.
evolution.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's kind of it's similar because like, you go through like the I don't want to call them fads because they all have like good parts to them, but like you go and you try the certain things, but you
Mm,
take away the skills and like I didn't know you played basketball like all the other sports. I knew you played football because you told me that, but
yeah.
that's awesome, like having that background. And I think that specifically, like I said, is what sets you apart from like a lot of coaches because like that's all experience and that's like a wide range of experience in terms of like experience with the sports, experience with the practice, load management, the training for each of
Yeah.
those, what it feels like. Because like I said, I think with coaching specifically, one of the biggest things I've taken away is not so much that you had to have done it, but like you want to be involved in some way in the sport before you go telling people like, oh, you got to do it this way because you don't know what it feels like to play a full game of basketball
Mm,
or get hit by somebody in football, and
yeah.
putting yourself in that position is only going to be more beneficial for you to experience it and then redefine it and refine your skills.
Yeah.
So I think that's awesome. And now stepping into the fight space, right? Like whether it be just playing around with it or maybe one day trying it, or even, there's so much that you can do within, the fight sports, whether it be boxing or Muay Thai and jujitsu. I think you're going to scratch the itch and that's going to go all the way through and you're going to like a little bit more. So jujitsu might be
Yeah.
something to try, things like that. But, you know, the programming, right? You look at it, you look at all the different aspects of just programming for like a basic person up to, like you're saying, like trying to figure out or learn about the fight sports. And it's just putting yourself through it, which is cool. That's the biggest thing, and like having the confidence to say,
Yeah.
all right, let me step away. And like you even said before, you're like, I'm a little bit sore from like the stuff you did the other day, and it's just new to you. Doesn't mean that's bad, but like
Yeah.
you're putting yourself in a position to learn and experience and probably mess up a little bit or not understand things, But I think that's the beauty of coaching, one, and the beauty of like having these conversations, being able to turn to. Because like I said, for you, for me, with you, like having that person to kind of turn to has been like helpful, like super helpful, and everything
Mm,
that I have going on with like the girls and the fighters and me trying to like build that up because there's like valid information I can turn to and be like, hey, what's going on? Like, what do you think? What do you think I could do here? And it's
yeah.
it's cool to see you in the space and like what you're doing and everything. Uh, so I guess last question, right? what would be the number one thing you tell women right now who either want to get in shape or just maybe don't fully understand what it is that this can do? What would you tell them?
I think that it's just a journey, and it's always a journey, because I think people have like a very all or nothing approach. And I definitely did when I first started as well. Like, very like, I was the cardio bunny and restricted my eating and things like that. Like I wanted to be skinny kind of thing. But, it is a journey, and, the journey is just gonna like take you to places that you never even knew. Like it might lead you to places you had no idea you would go. So I think that, because like, I'm quite a process driven person as well. So like I love learning new skills. And so, I haven't competed, like, I mean, with the football, like it was like competitive, but it wasn't necessarily professional. And so like with powerlifting, I got really strong, and I know how to get really strong. So I know how to coach people to get really strong, but I didn't necessarily compete. I wasn't the strongest person. And I've gotten really lean before, and like I never competed on stage or anything like that. So I know the process to getting people lean, but it doesn't necessarily mean I was like a bikini model champion or whatever.
Right.
And so, with the fighting thing, it's like I don't necessarily have a desire to get in the ring or anything like that. But I just want to learn. And, same with like the weightlifting, like, I just wanted to learn how to move, like how to do those, movements, like power cleans and snatches and clean and jerk and things like that, because they actually really, really helped my power when I was playing football, and my speed as well. And so, if I have any type of athlete who wants to come to me for coaching, like potentially like that could be another avenue. Like I said before, like I do want to go into maybe back into research, but then also potentially like maybe coaching athletes or something like that, wherever the road takes me.
Yeah.
But just like going through those different processes and going on those different journeys, I think is really important for women to understand that it's going to change, and it's got to be something that's sustainable, and it's got to be something that you absolutely love. Because, like once I just stopped absolutely loving like the powerlifting, I was like, okay, what's next? And then like, when I stopped focusing on the aesthetics, like, okay, what's next? And that's kind of, led me to thinking more about like athleticism and boxing, and like you said, maybe jiu-jitsu. My partner's like trying to get me into it. Like we do some
Love
like
it.
home wrestles at the moment, but he's like, let's go on the mat like Friday night kind of thing. So we'll kind of see, like it's all a journey. And so just I think finding something that you love, and it doesn't, and this is like really difficult for me to say because I'm so attached to weight training. It doesn't have to be in the gym. Like
Yeah,
I
of course.
think weight training is really important, but it doesn't purely have to be in the gym. Like if you're just starting out, it can be in the gym twice a week, and then maybe it's like, I don't know, like rock climbing or something, like whatever, like you love to do, like whatever, like however you can move your body. Like there is such, I think in the fitness industry, it's like, you got to lift weights kind of thing. And it's like, yes, like that's really definitely helpful having that resistance training for women, 1000%. But if you don't love it, then, how can you move your body in a way that you enjoy, a way that you love, and a way that's sustainable? And some coaches might disagree, and they might be like, no, there's only like one way to do it. But like there are people who are like really healthy who just go out and surf all day, like that's their exercise, and there's
Yeah.
nothing necessarily wrong with that. Like I think we as coaches get very wrapped up in our identity of like weight training and in the gym, and so we force that onto our clients. And maybe they want to train at home, or maybe they want to like run a marathon, or maybe they want to do a triathlon or something like that. And if they ask you to coach them, like, have you got the tools to be able to do that? Do you need to refer out, kind of thing? So I want to have a lot of tools in my tool belt, so that I can, if someone comes to me and says like, I want to do this, I'm like, yeah, sweet, like I know how to do that.
Yeah. And I think like you said, you said a lot of good stuff in that whole the whole talk, but
Sorry.
no, that's good. I was just listening, taking it all in. It's good. I think with
Okay.
all that stuff, it's awesome because there's so much out there. And like you said, specifically, I think one of the biggest things for me, coming from like the biggest background I had, which is like lifting, right? I played basketball my whole life, and then I lifted slightly, but my coach, like my head coach, was like our strength conditioning coach, which it was terrible. Like I think back what we did, and I'm like, no. And like thinking to what I do now and how I train people now, and like how I've kind of learned to, almost condense the lifting and just become efficient, and then use my body outside of the gym. I'm a sicko, and I still do both throughout like probably 5 or 6 days a week. Like I'll do jujitsu or Muay Thai or boxing plus the lifting. But
Yeah.
to be healthy and to just move and not train, like lifting twice a week and then doing something outside, like Kayla said, going to find a sport, going to play a intramural league or like a rec league, or just joining whatever. I've more and more gone into finding ways to get outside of the gym and like use the gym in doses, use it efficiently, use it in the right patterns and specific patterns, and then just get out and move your body. Because I think that people now are in this, and I tend to think things move in like pendulums like that, right? And I think strength training wasn't like as efficient back in the day, and there was a lot of athletics that people tried to do, and then now it's turning into people doing athletics, but they're doing a lot of like weightlifting. And I think there's gonna be a happy medium that's starting to come about with like training for athletics, but like the normal person having that opportunity to not only train but like just move their body freely in different ways. And again, even if you are in the gym, right, and it's playing around with like skipping patterns or running patterns or hopping and jumping and introducing these things in the right way, because if they're not utilized the right way, they can be, I don't want to say detrimental, but like you can get hurt, if you're not doing it right. But finding ways for especially women to freely move outside of like constraints of like lifting, like being like, oh, you got to stay in this specific pattern, you got to brace yourself and move through like a robot, instead of just kind of freely moving and feel your body, feel yourself go through these like bad ranges of motion, or your posture give up, right, and kind of feel these things go. And I think that more and more with like the information you're putting out, the information that's evolving out there already, that I think women are in good hands as long as they can find you, right? But they're in good hands, and I think you're on your way to like doing some good stuff for women's training. So where can they find you? And any last remarks or anything that you want to put out before?
Yeah, well, I just want to say thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all of that as well. I really appreciate it. So you can find me, like, probably the easiest place is Instagram, as always. So at Kayla Lee Physio. Our education page is at AWPT_university. So there's a lot of women's health stuff posted on there as well, like a lot of women's health education stuff. So I find that like a lot of the stuff that we post there is like really, really interesting as well. And because it's not just to do with training, it's also like, very women's health specific as well, and some things that you might not know.
I love
bit
the slides you've been
to
putting
on
out.
that page.
They've been dope. They've been
on that page.
Good.
Yeah, we go into all kinds of details on that page. Like, it's great. So they're probably like the two easiest places to find. Our website is awptuniversity.com. That's just where we have all our courses and things like that. If you're a coach, especially male coach, or not especially, like both male and female, but I especially love like having the male coaches in, because I think sometimes they don't think like the course is for them, but like it probably is more so for them. But yeah, that's all I really have to say. And thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I absolutely love chatting to you, and looking forward to you can follow my journey, I guess, like as Brandon coaches me. We'll see how far we go.
Yeah, it's gonna be dope. Thank you for coming on. Go follow her. Make sure you find her stuff. Use it, right? Especially if you're a female and you have questions, you can reach out to her. or reach out to me and I'll get you in touch with her. All right.
Yeah,
So,
no, that Brandon's got the answers now. It's all
well, I have
good.
some of them, but I'll turn to the expert. But yes, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you guys for tuning in and listening. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.